Hi, everybody. This is part three of Introduction to Poetry. Should be the last part. Um, I want to start by talking a little bit about poetry's connection to music. Um, I think everyone has a song that they love the lyrics to, that they think the lyrics are really um, profound and moving. Um, and there's a strong connection between poetry and music. They both have rhythm. Poems don't always have rhyme, but often do, and so do song lyrics. There's a tone that is set in songs, and there's a tone that is set in music. Lyrics to songs are poems, um, and so it's interesting to me that we love songs, and not many people would say that they love poetry, but there is a strong link. So, but at this point, I asked you to listen to this song, Nebraska, by Bruce Springsteen, that had the lyrics attached. So, I want to talk a little bit about that song. Here are the lyrics. Um, I'm going to take this down and make it this size so I can kind of write on it. One thing you might have noticed is this song doesn't have a chorus. It's just a ballad. A ballad is just a song that tells a story. And this story is told in the first person. We can tell from the very first letter. I saw her standing on her front lawn, just a twirling her baton. So it's a kind of a disturbing poem, song, um, told by a guy who killed everything in his path, as he says here. Um, who did he do it with? Well, we don't have her name, but she was twirling a baton, so the assumption is that she was pretty young. Here in the first stanzas, these are called stanzas, the poetic equivalent of a paragraph. It says, me and her went for a ride, and 10 innocent people died. It's interesting here that he doesn't say yet that I killed 10 innocent people. He said they died, which takes the responsibility kind of away from him in the way that it's phrased. One thing you want to do when you're looking at poetry is to look at repeated words. So this word sir comes up here and here and here and right at the end. So it's strange that a murderer would be so polite, and it creates a strange effect on us. And that's very intentional. It says from the town of Lincoln, Nebraska, sawed off 410. It's important to look sometimes at what he doesn't say, the words that a poet chooses. 410 instead of a shotgun. 410 is more specific. Um, he's not trying to teach us about shotguns. It's just that's what it is, right? Through the Badlands. This is kind of ironic or an obvious echo of his activities. I killed everything in my path. I can't say that I'm sorry for the things that we done. We don't know how responsible she is yet. At least for a little while, sir. Me and her, we had us some fun. Now the jury brought in a guilty verdict, and the judge, he sentenced me to death, midnight in a prison storeroom with leather straps across my chest. This next stanza is interesting in that he says, when the man pulls that switch, we assume he's talking about the electric chair. Snaps my forehead back. You make sure my pretty baby is sitting right there on my lap. Well, this is interesting because just over here is that same phrase, on my lap. What was on his lap before was his gun, which begs the question, who is his pretty baby? His gun or his girl? Um, it's not exactly clear. Maybe his true love is his gun. If it's his gun, that's pretty sinister. He wants to go out with his gun on his lap. If it's the girl, it's almost worse because as he's being put in the electric chair, he wants his girlfriend, fellow, whatever, murder, killing spree buddy. He wants her on his lap, which is like pretty twisted, right? Take one more out with me. Um, they declared me unfit to live. Sat into that great void, my soul be hurled. They want to know why I did what I did. Here we're getting at what might be the theme for this song, this poem, and that is the question that we all ask when we hear about something like this happening. Killing spree, someone seemingly randomly killing people. Why? We all want to know why. And here's his answer. Sir, I guess there's just a meanness in this world, which may or may not be very satisfying. It's not really to me. To me, it's an interesting poem because it doesn't give us an answer. He doesn't really tell us why. There's just a meanness, puts him again in a passive position, like saying 10 innocent people died. There's just a meanness, and I was caught up in it. Takes the responsibility away from him. So obviously, this isn't Bruce Springsteen talking. Bruce Springsteen isn't a murderer. He takes on a persona. In short stories, we call it a narrator, a storyteller, and in poetry, we call it a speaker. So it's the speaker who's the young man in this story. Talking about what he did. So this is the level that I want you guys to learn how to read poetry at. It's very kind of microscopic reading. This song was actually inspired by true events. If you look down at the next slide, you can pause this video and read that. It's actually from a true story. Pause it now. Okay, you can see that this was an actual act of violence before the internet was the name of the title. Yeah. And the kind of thing that we all ask why. Why? She was 14, he was 19. So, moving on, a few poetic terms. I just told you about stanzas. You can pause this now and look these over. Stanzas, speaker. I actually have already told you about these terms. Quatrain is a 4-line stanza. So were those quatrains? They were quatrains. And a few more. A lyric is a short poem, song-like. A lyre was an ancient kind of harp. It's an instrument. So that term is from that word lyre. Oxymoron, you probably know. It's a compact paradox, like a mute cry, pleasing pain, muddled clarity. Jumbo shrimp is another one, famous one. And then alliteration and assonance are repetitions. Alliteration, repetition of consonant sounds, like free form phantoms fall far. Assonance is a repetition of vowel sounds, like light and bride, or how now brown cow. And poets use these for particular effect. Repetition of words, repetition of sounds. I want you to pause this video now and read this poem. Go ahead. I like this poem because it's about poetry. It's a poem about poetry, and you can see that the I, the speaker, seems to be teacher of poetry, it seems. And there are all these passages where he or she asks them, which we assume are students, what he's asking them to do with a poem. Hold it up to the light, press an ear against its hive, to look carefully at it, to listen to it, to drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out. Walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch, to experience the poem visually, with touch, and with sound. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore, to have fun, really, to enjoy it. But, so this poem could be cut in half, really. The first, 9, 10, 11 lines. And then the word but appears. And that's where this poem could be divided. Because it says, but all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means. So it's split between what the teacher wants and what the students want. What the students want is, tell me what you mean, poem, to beat it, to torture it, because they assume that it means one thing, that it has a secret. And that's, I want to try and get you guys to think differently about poetry. Not that it has one secret to tell, one confession to make, one answer, but it has a whole host of meanings that are interrelated. And sure, you can think that the poem means one thing, but a person coming right after you and reading the poem can think that it means something different, and you're both right. And as far as your papers go, or your exam, really the most important thing is for you to defend your interpretation by looking carefully at the language and explaining it. So, one more poem. This is just to say, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. This poem is, some people don't even think it's a poem. It reads like a note that a roommate might have put on the refrigerator. Sorry, I ate the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. If the poem stopped right there, it wouldn't be as good. The last stanza really makes it good because the speaker says, forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. You see the alliteration in the so sweet. It's sort of sinister the way they say how sweet the plums were, because it's like insult to injury, right? I took your plums. I know you were saving for them for breakfast. Also, they were really good. So it kind of twists the knife. Maybe in a playful way. Some people think this is a poem from a husband to his wife. But it's just kind of an interesting one, short in 3 stanzas. There's a parody of it. Well, first of all, I wonder if you think this is a poem by a man or a woman. Usually classes are kind of split. It is a man. Also, there was a parody written. I have finished the beer that was in the icebox and which you were probably saving for Friday. Forgive me. This girl came over, so sweet and so hot. This is from a book called Broetry, a book of poems by dudes, I guess. I never read the book, but someone sent this to me. And so I'll end with this. I sent you this link that I'd like you to watch. It's a very short clip from a film called American Beauty. It's not about poetry per se, but it kind of is, because you'll see that this young man who's a filmmaker films this bag that he sees on the street. And the connection to poetry is really about carefully observing language. He's an observer of the world, and he finds this bag fascinating. He films it, but it's like a lot of poetry is just noticing, just taking the time to notice what you might skip over if you just quickly read through a poem and went on with your day. So I'm trying to get you guys to slow down, to pay attention to language, to think about the connotations of words, and to look carefully. And we'll be doing more of that as we progress in the poetry unit. Okay, that's all, everybody.